my name is Heather, and today I'm going to teach you how to paint this witchy autumn owl. For your supplies, you'll need a canvas. I'll be using an 11 by 14 canvas, and you'll need your paints. I have some Dick Blick paints here and some Apple Barrel. I have black and white and acrylic, bright red, chrome orange. For my Apple Barrel paints, I have turquoise, Kelly green, and nutmeg brown. You can use any versions of these colors you want, so you can just grab any orange you have, any blue you have, but these are the ones that I'll be using. You'll also want a styrofoam plate. I have a couple. I'll be using one for the background color, and then the other one will be for all my other colors. You'll also want some brushes. I have 4 brushes. I have a big flat brush that is a 1 inch, a smaller flat brush, this one's 3/8 of an inch, and I have a bigger round brush. You can use like a number 5 or number 6. And then I have a tiny brush. This one is a size 0. I also have a piece of chalk. We'll need this for sketching. And then you'll want some paper towels and a water source. I have my rinse well from Dick Blick. And that's all of the supplies. So now that we have everything, let's get started. We're going to start with the background layer. For the background, we're going to use the Apple Barrel turquoise. And I'm just going to put some of that on my plate. And then I'm going to get some white, and I'm using the Dick Blick white. And then I'm going to use my big flat brush to grab some blue and grab some white. And I'm not going to mix them in good. I'm just going to kind of get some blue and some white. And I'm just going to kind of be a little messy on the canvas. And you can just keep switching between the blue and the white. So like if you want more white streaks, just go right in with the white. And then you can add some more blue. So just kind of have fun with it. The background is the funnest part because it doesn't really have to be anything or look like anything. It can just be splotches of color. And just make sure that you kind of smooth it out a little bit, so just don't have any really thick parts, otherwise it's going to take a really long time to dry. But I like to not blend it a whole lot for this painting so that you still see some of those brush marks and like the light parts and the dark parts. I just think it makes it look really interesting. So that's why I'm not actually brushing over it a lot to blend it too much. After we're done with the front, we can go ahead and do the edges to match. They don't need to match exactly, just kind of roughly. So I'm just going to get a little bit of the blue and a little bit of white on my brush, and then I'll just hold it up like this and just do short little strokes from the back to the front of the canvas. Now that that's all done, we can wait for the background to dry. In the meantime, I'll go rinse my brush off in the sink, and then we'll come back and start sketching our owl. The next step after the background is dry is to sketch on our owl. So we're going to start by just finding the center of the canvas. So if we go down to about the center, and then we'll make a little oval for the head. And the width of it can probably be about 1/3 of the canvas. So if you were to break this into thirds, that would be 1/3. And then we can decide where our branch is going to be. So we do want to leave a little bit of room for the tail. So maybe the branch, we can do it like around here. So you can put like about maybe 3 finger widths between. And then that's where the branch will be. So then we can fill that space in with the body, which is basically going to be 2 parentheses, or a set of parentheses. And then we can add a witch hat. We're going to want to make the brim of the hat like right below where the top of the head is, and it's just going to be a little slight curve like that. And then you can go ahead and loop it back on either side, and then we can just bring these up a little bit towards the top of the head, and then go ahead and connect them. And now you can make the top of your witch hat. So you can just make it go as tall as you want. I like to leave a little bit of margin from the top of the canvas. And then we'll just make it kind of curve around however you want. Go ahead and do the other side of the witch hat so that you can make it kind of somewhat symmetrical. And then you can curve this around like that. And you just want to make sure you leave room so that your little spider can hang. You might need to pull this out a little more so that he has like some room to hang down. And then we're going to have a little green strappy thing here, so we can add that. We're going to have a scarf, so you can rub out the neck right here, and then we're actually going to do each side of the scarf, like here and here, and then connect with a curve. And then we'll worry about the tail of the scarf later. We can go ahead and add the tail down here. So I just like to continue this curve, like kind of going down like that, like almost to a V. And then just add your little bottoms of the feathers. So I just put 4 little like letter U's right here. So a letter U, 4 of them. And then go ahead and extend your branch to the left and to the right. You can make it branch out. And I like to do this kind of like the letter Y. So if you were to turn the canvas sideways, it would look like a Y as far as the angles. So this is basically like a 45-degree angle right here. You don't want to have your branch coming down. You want it to be going kind of out at a 45-degree angle. This is pretty good for our sketch, so you can go ahead and put your chalk away. And then we can grab our small flat brush and we'll fill in our owl with white to start. So I'm going to grab some white on my plate. And with my small flat brush, I'll just fill him in. And you just want to skip the scarf and the hat. But you can overlap the branch here, that's fine. That'll be easy to go over. And also remember that this is only the first coat, so it is going to be a little bit see-through, and that's okay because we're going to do a couple more coats on it. So it'll be nice and solid by the end. Make sure that you don't put the paint on super thick. You want it to be just like a nice, somewhat thin coat so that it'll dry, and then we can go over it later. After we're done with the white parts of the owl, then we can go ahead and start filling in some of the other parts. So we can do our scarf here that's orange. This is going to take a few coats because the orange can be very thin. We're actually going to start by mixing orange and white together because the orange would just be completely see-through with the blue under it. So I like to start by doing a very light orange, so that we basically just want to cover the background. So the white is a very opaque paint. So that's why we want to mix the orange and the white so that it's nice and opaque and not see-through. And that way we can cover up the blue pretty good. But we'll probably need a couple coats of this one. So we'll go back and do another coat after it dries. And now I can rinse my brush and dry it on my paper towel. And then I'll go ahead and start filling in the hat. So for the hat, we're going to use black, and we will mix a little bit of white with it because we don't want to just make it a solid black. It's better if it has some lights and darks to it. So we'll add a little bit of white so we can have like some dark and light parts. So it'll just be like a very, very dark gray. So I'm just adding a little bit of white, but as you can see, it's still pretty black. And now I'll just fill this in. And I'm using the side of my brush like this so that I can get these nice hard edges here. And then for going around this part, it might be easier to switch to one of the smaller brushes. So I'll use my bigger round brush here and I'll just do this small part. So I'm just going to do the outline first and then I'll fill it in. And I'll use this brush for going around the rim also. So I want to do this whole part here, and we're just leaving the part that's going to be green. We're leaving that not painted yet. And if you start to get a lot of these little holes, like where you can see the background through it, you either need more paint on your brush, or if you get more paint and that still happens, get your brush wet, and then you can just dry it a little bit on the paper towel, but still keep it kind of wet, because it basically means your brush is kind of drying out, the paint maybe is drying out a little bit, so that'll help it to re-wet it a bit. And then we do want to go a little bit lighter on the rim, because we're going to want the inside part of the hat to be just a little bit darker so you can actually see the difference. So I'll just mix a little bit more of this white in to kind of make the rim a little bit lighter. We may need a little more white. And then that way we'll be able to see the inside of the hat a little bit better. And actually for the inside of the hat, you can go ahead and just use just black, and then that'll make it stand out really good. All right, so there's the black part of our hat. We can add a little bit of shading later, but let's go ahead and do our branch. Rinse and dry your brush. Oh, don't forget to rinse and dry your flat brush. Here's my brown that I'm using. It's Apple Barrel Nutmeg Brown. And I'll also mix a little bit of the black with it just to make it a little bit of a darker brown. And I also want to mix a little bit of white because, again, that's going to make it a little more opaque, just like with the other stuff. Once you get a brown that you think looks okay, which, by the way, if it's a little too light because of the white, that's okay, because we can just go over it later with a second coat. So go ahead and go over your branch. Right now you're just getting the first coat on your branch, just kind of getting it down. Don't worry so much about the thickness of the branch just yet. Try to make it get skinny at the ends of the branches though, because you can't really undo that if you make them really thick. Once you have that down, you can make it thicker on the left and it gets thinner on the right. So I'm just going to add more on the left side. And with the branch, you don't need to try to make it perfect or anything. It can be kind of wobbly. You know, I mean, this is supposed to be a Halloween painting, so it can be a little bit spooky. You can even do it more spooky than mine, like if you want hard edges. Like if you make these kind of like sharp edges, that could look spooky and kind of neat. But I'm just going to add some little bit of wobbliness to it. And then just make sure it gets smaller as it goes to the ends of these guys. When you're done with that, you can rinse your brush and dry it on your paper towel. Now we can go ahead and add our green part to the hat. This is Kelly Green. And this one I'll just add a teeny bit of white. We don't actually need very much because the blue underneath it will play well with the green. But just a little bit, just so it's not quite so liquidy looking. And then I messed up a little bit here. I went a little bit over the black with the green, so I'll show you how to fix that. If I just rinse my brush and then dry it, but I don't want to get it completely dry, so it's still a little bit damp, and then I'll just go side to side and just kind of pick up that paint. And then I can just wipe it on my paper towel. And now that we're done with that, we can go ahead and do another coat of white on the owl. Just make sure that you avoid getting white on the branch here. You don't want to smear your paint. After I rinse and dried this brush, I'll set it aside and grab my flat brush. And let's do the white. And don't worry about shading right now. We're going to do a little bit of shading on the owl after we have our white nice and solid. So that'll probably be the next coat that we do of the white. And when you do these tail feathers, you can turn your brush sideways, and then that way you'll be able to get in these little edges. Or if it's easier, you could also just use one of the smaller brushes. But I do like to use the flat brush when I can for filling in because it just spreads the paint better, nice and smooth. Now that the orange is dry, we can add a second coat of the orange. So we'll probably want to do another coat of the orange plus the white. After that, you can rinse and dry your brush. Let's go ahead and add our spider. I'm going to use the tiny brush, and I'm just going to get it wet and then dry it gently on the paper towel so the bristles come together to a point. You definitely have to look at your bristles at this point and make sure that they're coming together at a point, because if they're not, if you have frayed bristles or something, then it's just not going to look good at all. So make sure that your bristles come to a point. And then you can just dip your brush right into the black. And first you want to make your string that the little spider is going to be on. If you're having a hard time making this thin line here, check out my video on how to paint thin lines. But the main thing is that you don't want to be holding your brush like a pencil and going up like that. You're going to get a thick line. You want to be pulling your bristles like this. And if it helps to even turn the canvas so that you can kind of pull it like this, you can do that too. And then we're going to get some more black, and we'll just do a little circle here for the spider's body and fill it in. And then we'll just do 4 little legs. I like to usually just like kind of start at the bottom, and that way I can just keep kind of stacking them so I don't run out of room. Or start at the top and then just stack it down. After that, you can rinse that brush and dry it. And then go ahead and grab your bigger round brush, the medium round, and we can add some of our fall leaves around. Just like before, we're gonna wanna mix the orange and the white, and then later we'll be able to go back over it with a darker coat of orange. So go ahead and add some of your fall leaves. And for this painting, I'm doing them in kind of like a little teardrop shape. So I just take my brush, and I'm doing them in all different rotations too, since they're kind of falling. So like this one, I'll have the round part facing up. So I just make the round part with the tip. So you want the brush facing where you want the round part to be. And then you can hold your brush up. So you just get a little bit of the tip of the brush and just do your little 2 lines pointing down to make kind of a triangle tip. I hope that made sense. And then I'll do this one here. And then we can do some fall leaves on the branches. And now I will rinse my brush and dry it, and then I'll do some brown leaves. And with this one, I'll also want to mix some white with it because the brown's going to be really see-through. And then we can do some red leaves. So you can rinse and dry your brush, and then we'll get out the red. So I'm using the Acrylic Bright Red. And then I'll mix a little bit of white with this as well. And once we're done with that, we can go back to the orange and do a second coat. Since the acrylic paint dries really fast, especially when there's a lot of white in it, your orange leaves should be dry already. And you can just add a second coat of the orange and white if you can still see the blue through it. So I can still see the blue through mine, so that's why I'm doing another coat of the light orange. And then the brown. I can probably go darker with the brown now. And then my red is still drying, so I'll just leave that for now. But we can go ahead and add a second coat of the green part on the hat. So I'm just going to take a little bit of white, mix it with my green, and just go right over the band on the hat. And you can rinse and dry your brush when you're done with that. Once your white is dry, you can do the final coat, and we're gonna have our shading with it. So we can go ahead and grab the white, and we're gonna get a teeny bit of brown. That's what we're gonna use for our shading. So I have a very light brown here. And I just want to hold my brush so it's right against the edge like this. And then that's gonna add that shading, and then I can kind of blend it in. And then we also want to show where the wing is going to be. So I'm going to do the same thing right against here. Let me get a little bit more brown. It's not really showing up. Okay. There we go. So I'm kind of pushing it against that edge there. And then I still have a lot of paint on my brush. I'm going to wipe it off on the paper towel. And then I'll just kind of smooth this out. I'll grab some white, pure white, and just kind of blend it in like that. And we'll probably go over the wing with a little bit of white later, so it's just a little bit lighter. But see, this way now it's like darker here, and it's going to get lighter as it goes towards the belly. And then we'll just go over the belly with some white here. And let's make sure we bring this all the way up. And now we can do the same thing with the other side, which I like to rotate my canvas because it's really hard to do that with your hand like that. So now I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm going to get some brown, mix it with my white, and I'll go right against this edge. And then just kind of blend it in. If you have a ton of paint on your brush, make sure you wipe it off so that you're not just adding a ton more paint here. And then I will get a little more brown, mix it in. And I'm going a little bit darker with this second one here, because you want to be able to tell where the wing is. So there's that one. And then I'm just going to wipe this off on my paper towel, and then I will brush over it. And then I'm just going to grab some white to blend it in. Just going in the same direction with my brush strokes. Like from his scarf all the way down to the branch. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of white on the wing here. So you can just take your brush and you want to hold it sideways like this, so you get the skinny edge. And then I'll also do it on the other side, just to lighten it a bit, so you can see that wing. All right, and then now I'm going to turn my canvas back. And now I'm going to do those brown edges on the head too. So I'm just going to grab the brown, and I'll go right along the side there. And then I can take some white and go right next to it, and then I'll just blend them together. And then I'll do the other side. I have a lot of paint on my brush, so I'm going to wipe it off. Get some white. And see how my brush strokes are going in the same direction? The white ones are in the same direction as the brown ones. So I'm just going with the curve of the head. And that's pretty good. So now I will rinse this and dry it. And then let's go ahead and use our big round brush to do a second coat on the tail, which we can have a little bit of shading down there too. So we can have some of this light brown right along here and right along the bottom of the tail, It doesn't really need to be a lot, just kind of subtle, just so it matches the rest. And then just fill the rest in with white. And as you do that, you just want to kind of brush along the brown part so that it just blends in. And then you can rinse and dry that brush. Now we can go ahead and add a second coat on the branch, because as you can see the white of the owl through the branch. So we're just going to take some black and mix it with the brown, and we can go right over that. And then we want to go over the whole branch, just in case, you know, if the color we're using is darker or lighter than the original. We want it to all match. And if you want, you can just kind of take some of the light color and do some streaks. And then you could take some of the dark and do some streaks, so you kind of get a little bit of the tree texture there. Then you can rinse your brush and dry it. And then let's add our little autumn leaves up here that are going to be stuck in the hat there. So I'm going to start with my orange one. So I'm going to get some white and some orange. I'll just do one right here. And then I'll rinse and dry my brush. And then I'm going to grab some of the red. So I'm going to do some white mixed with some red. And I'll add that one in, and I want to have them kind of going in like a V, so that way I'll be able to add the brown one right in the middle. So this one's going to be kind of sticking out like that. Once those are dry, I'll add the brown one. Let's go ahead and do our last coat of orange on these leaves. For this last coat, you can use just the orange paint, and you don't need to mix any white with it. We can grab the red and then do a coat of the red on here. You may want to have a little bit of white mixed in with it still. But it also kind of depends on your painting, on how much it covered the last time you did it. We can do our last coat of brown, so you can use just the brown with no white. Now let's go ahead and add the tail of the scarf. Now that we have our shading done on the body, we can grab some of our white and our orange and mix them together, and we're going to want a nice light orange for this. And then you can just make an arc kind of going from the scarf and just however you want your tail to be. And then make an edge, and then just make another arc parallel to that first one, and then you can go ahead and fill that in. We're also going to have a little tail that's going to be behind that one, so you want to go a teeny bit darker with this, but again, you still want to have it mostly white, but you just want to be able to tell the difference between the two so you don't get them mixed up or they don't become one big blob. So I'm just going to do a little line that goes right along that first one. And as you can see, it doesn't go out as far as the first tail because it's kind of like behind it. So we'll let that dry. We can add our eyes in. So I rinsed and dried my brush, and then the eyes are going to be a nice pretty green. So I'm going to grab some white, mix it with my green. For the first one, you can just kind of eyeball where you want it to be. So kind of guesstimate like where the center of the head is, and then just decide like how far over you want it. So let's say like here, and I'll make a circle. And then for the second one though, that's the one that you have to kind of pay attention when you're doing it. So for the second one, you want it to be about the same distance from the face so that they're kind of symmetrical. So this one is about the distance of like a little bit more than my thumb. So I may want to do it like here. And then another thing is, if I don't really like it, or say I want them to be like maybe a little closer together, then I would just make this one like a little bit bigger towards the inside of the head, and then make this one a little bit bigger towards the inside. So you know, you can do a little bit of finagling, add a little here, add a little there. And then just go ahead and fill them in all the way when you're happy with them. And if you do mess up and completely hate it, Oh, you can check out my video, how to fix mistakes, but the short answer would be that I would get this brush wet, and you want to do it as quickly as possible so it doesn't dry too much. You would get this brush wet and just take off the paint with the brush and then dry it, take off more, wet it, dry it, blah, 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 until you have the paint off. But again, you can check out my video. And then we can go ahead and rinse this brush and dry it. And then we can do the little beak. We can use the tiny brush for that and the black. You just want to try to make sure it's pretty centered between the eyes, lower than the bottom of the eyeballs. So it could be maybe about here. If you're a little scared to just like go ahead and make the beak right away, just find where you want it to be. So I want it to be below these eyes. So like down here, and this is about the middle, and I'll just make a little dot. And so this looks like a good place for the top of the beak. And then now I can actually make the beak. It's pretty important to be holding your brush the right way when you're doing little details like this. So you want your brush to be perpendicular to the canvas as much as possible. If you're holding it like this, then you're not going to do very good details. You're not going to have a lot of control over the bristles. Oh yeah, so I do it as like an upside down teardrop shape. And then the other thing is that we can do our black markings for the owl. He has some lines that go kind of around the eyes, around the top. And you're not going to see a lot of them because they're going to be covered by the hat. But you're going to start kind of in the middle of the eyes. You can do your first mark like that. And then you're going to have some that are going to kind of curve over the eyes. So you want to go with the curve of the eyes. You can add some more kind of going into the hat, but then don't overlap the hat so the hat's kind of covering them. And you can do some more kind of going like that. So they're going to be going in an arc this way. And just add some more that kind of go on these sides like that. And then we can do like this. We can also do the wings. So for these, you can just do little sideways marks. Some of them will be just partially on the wing and just like kind of on the edge. And then some will be fully on the wing. So you want to just stagger it. You don't want it to look too much like a contrived pattern. Try to make it look kind of random. Now we can add the feet. We're gonna have 3 toes on each foot. All I'm gonna do is just like a little brush stroke here, kind of like an upside down teardrop, but elongated, I would say. But there's not really an exact science to it. I do like to make the top of it kind of round like a knuckle and then just kind of pull it down. And then on the other side, just try to make sure you have it about the same distance from the wing. And then we can go ahead and add a second coat of green to the eyes. So I rinsed and dried this brush, and then I'm going to take my bigger brush and a little bit of white, mix it with some green, and fill these in. If you get a little ridge of paint right on the edge there, where you don't want to really brush it up because you'll probably go outside of your shape that you're making, you can take your finger and put it outside of the shape and just lightly brush it in, and then that'll get that extra paint off. After that, you can rinse your brush and dry it. And then let's add our little brown leaf up here in the hat. So I'll take a little bit of white, mix it with my brown, and then I'm just gonna have a little leaf overlapping those ones. I'll rinse this and dry it. Now let's grab our flat brush and do a second coat of the orange. So we want some white and some orange. And we may as well do another coat on the neck part too. I'm going to rinse my brush and dry it, and then I'm going to do the second coat of the one in the back with this smaller brush since it's such a skinny little area. So the orange and the white again, but just a teeny bit more orange. And we can also start adding our little fringe on the edge. I'm going to rinse this brush, and then I'm going to use my tiny brush for the fringe. So I'm going to get some of this orange and white, and I'll do some little lines here for the fringe. And then I'll rinse this and dry it. For the next step, we can go ahead and do our second coat on our little leaves that are in the hat. We can probably do the final coat of orange at this point. And then for the brown, we'll probably want to do another coat of the brown plus white. And then we may just want a little bit of white with the red as well for this coat. Now we can rinse and dry our brush, and we can go ahead and do another coat on the scarf. So I'm going to grab my flat brush. I'll just get some white and some orange, because this part right here is still pretty see-through. But this should be the last coat of the white and orange, and then we can do just the orange. And then I'll also do another coat on the neck of the scarf, although for this one we can go darker now, because we've done enough coats on this one. So I'm doing mostly all orange. I'll include just a tiny bit of white, so it's not like very wet and liquidy. But this is going to be my final coat of orange on the neck of the scarf. And then just to get a solid green on the eyes, I'm going to do those with the flat brush as well. So I'm going to rinse and dry this. And now I'm just going to grab some white and mix it with my green. Just a little bit of white. And then I'll go ahead and do the final coat here. And then notice I got a little bit outside of the eye, so I'm just going to get this brush a little bit wet and just pick that up. I just rinsed and dried my brush. I want to add a little bit of highlights to the hat. So I'm just going to take a little bit of white and mix it with my black and make like a gray. I'll just do some little light marks kind of going up the hat here. And I'm not really doing anything exact here, so just kind of brush strokes, random brush strokes here. I can just go right along this edge though. And then I'll go along the rim of the hat. And again, I messed up a little bit there, so I'll just get a wet brush again and just pick that up. That looks pretty good for the hat, so I'm going to rinse this and dry it. And now my eyes are dry, so I'm going to go ahead and do the pupils inside the eye. So I'm going to use my bigger round brush, and I'm just going to get some black and go right inside the eye. And now I just want to kind of look at them and see if they're symmetrical. So the green on this one is a little bit wider than the green on this one. So I'm just going to go a little bit bigger with the pupil. And now I can rinse and dry my brush. And I can do my final coat of brown and red on these little leaves in the hat. Once the eyes are dry, we can add our little highlights. So I'm going to do a little white dot here, and then one on the other side. I probably need to make this one a little bit bigger. I'll make a little smaller dot. And for this, I like to just dip my brush straight into the white so that I actually have it like covering the brush, and then just kind of dot it like that. That usually does a pretty good job, especially with the smaller dots. And then let's do one in the bottom left of each eye. And I'm kind of overlapping the green part of the eye and the black part. So it's like right on that border. And now I'll rinse this brush and dry it. For our last step, we can finish up the orange here. So I'm going to grab my bigger round brush, and I'm going to do a little bit of a darker orange for the tail and the back. And so for that, I'm going to mix a little bit of red with the orange. And then I'll go ahead and do that part. So now that'll really stand out against the one in the front, and you'll be able to see it. And then I'm going to grab my flat brush, and I'm going to do just orange on this part here. I did overlap the neck a little bit, so I'm just going to smooth that out. And we could actually add a little bit of shading to the neck part of the scarf. So let's do that. Let's get a little bit of that red with the orange again. And let's just put a little bit down at the bottom here, just along the bottom. And then now I'm going to wipe the extra paint off my brush. And I'll get some orange and I'll go back over the top part of the scarf. And then I'll brush over where the orange and the dark orange connect, just to blend them together. And as you can see, I do mess up a lot. As long as I can fix it, it's no big deal. And then we can grab our tiny brush and just do some of these little fringe parts. Just go over some of them so that some are light and some are dark. I kind of like to do that to just give it a little bit of variety in the tones. And that's it. Now our little owl painting is done. Tomorrow, when everything is all dried and cured, you can wipe off the chalk with a wet paper towel. I'll do it now just so you can see, but you'll definitely want to wait till tomorrow. So I'm just going to get some clean water here, and I'm just going to make this a little bit damp, not like soaking wet or anything. And then just wipe this off. And we're done. I hope you liked this tutorial, and I hope you had fun painting with me, and I hope you're excited for fall. I am. I'm so excited for the cooler weather and to wear sweaters and scarves and boots and drink hot chocolate. So have a nice day, and thanks for watching. Bye.